Hey guys, Booligan here with Booligan Shooting Sports. And today I'm introducing you to this monstrosity of a gun that you see in front of you. This is the ArmaLewis. It is an unholy abomination and combination of an Armalite pattern rifle and the Lewis machine gun from 1914. This one's a little hard to explain, but let's go ahead and dive into it. The whole concept behind this was to build what would sort of be the equivalent of a light machine gun version of an AR. Now, have been several light machine gun versions of the AR in existence, including the Colt LMG, of which I have a print hanging in my design studio. However, I'm a sucker for the classics, and as such, I really, really love the look of the Lewis gun. The Lewis gun featured kind of an interesting design up front. A lot of people thought that the Lewis gun was water-cooled because it had a big giant jacket or shroud up front, but it actually wasn't. It was air-cooled, and it used kind of an interesting concept to cool the barrel. So the whole barrel was fitted with an aluminum heat sink over basically the entirety of the barrel. And the shroud was open at the back, and it had a forward blast generating muzzle device and a little kink in the barrel that would generate a Venturi effect. Now, I'm not going to get into like fluid dynamics here, but basically, if you have a fluid or air or gas going in this direction and it hits kind of a compressed area, what it's going to do is it's actually going to create a vacuum behind it. So it's going to pull in cool air from here and pass it over those heat sinks and expel it out the front every time you shoot around. I really liked this concept. This concept didn't particularly work. And really why it was present on the Lewis guns was to differentiate it from an earlier prototype of basically the same gun. What they ended up doing, they ran these guns without that shroud pretty often in very hot places, and they really saw no heat creep. They saw nothing particularly troublesome, and it really is pretty clear that that didn't really do too much. But man, it looked so cool. So that's kind of the basis of it. I wanted to combine a Venturi air cooling system for the barrel with an AR. And of course, I had to tack on some additional parts to make it look like a retro light machine gun. The most interesting part is going to be the front, so we can talk most about this. How this whole thing works is I have a tubular free float handguard that has a ventilated barrel nut. I don't know if you'll be able to see it too well, but there's little vents here. What those vents are for is to ensure that you can properly clock the handguard and run the gas tube through it. But they are full ventilated through, and that works for my purposes. I had to turn down the outer diameter of that free float handguard. It's about 10 inches long, so it's about yay big. I had to turn down the outer diameter so that it would fit inside this large piece of aluminum tubing that I got. I went with aluminum because it's lightweight, it's easier for me to work with, and it was inexpensive. And by lightweight, I mean, I'm being very relative here because this whole thing as pictured weighs about 18 pounds empty. It's thick. But anyways, this shroud, underneath the shroud, JP Rifles, which if you don't know, JP Rifles they basically like own the competitive shooting scene for several different classifications. They make very good rifles. Well, they make a heat sink barrel system. It's a little clamp-on heat sink that clamps onto your barrel. And the concept is basically the same. It's just to pull heat off of that barrel and let it quickly dissipate to the atmosphere. It's really only designed for their barrel profiles. However, I was able to get one and modify it to fit with a standard standard M4 barrel profile. So inside of this is a 16-inch M4 profile barrel. ends about here. So the heat sink is wrapped around the hottest part of the barrel. And I can go ahead and I'll drop some pictures in, to kind of show how that looks. But the heat sink is here in the hottest part of the barrel. Moving up, you have a low profile gas block. It's a standard carbine length gas system. And then a linear compensator. So a compensator that's designed specifically not to blow out, not like a flash hider, but specifically to put gas out that direction. The theory, of course, being by doing that, it's going to create a vacuum upstream and pull cool air from here across those heat sinks and out the barrel. I don't expect this to work in any meaningful way. But look at it. This whole thing is really, I hate to say it's really just for looks, but it really is. I really just wanted to have something like a Lewis gun, but with an AR pattern base gun. But anyways, how these two are attached. So this aluminum shroud, if you will, was press fit. I actually had to use a press to fit it onto that free float handguard. And then it's secured with 8 M5 screws that are, you can kind of see them on this shroud band, if you will. The reason why I have this here is I didn't want to deal with countersinking the holes. It was easier to print a countersunk hole there. And also, I feel like I might add a leather wrap up here at some point, but we'll see what kind of heat this thing really generates. Up front, I needed a way to have an iron sight as well as to mount a bipod. The bipod, I went with a UTG M-Lock, so it's a Leapers M-Lock side folding bipod. See, it folds up nice and tight there against the sides. It's not attached by M-Lock. It's attached, it's drilled and tapped straight into the shroud itself with special little interlocking pieces on these. These pieces here I designed and printed. Up front, you have an adjustable front sight for elevation. At the rear, you have a fixed basic peep sight. Very simple sights. The optic that I have on here is a 3x magnification prism by Monstrum. I know that they don't have like the best reputation for making, truly excellent optics. But honestly, this thing seems fine in my use. They sent it over to me for me to attempt to break and to test out. And I've actually been pretty pleased with it so far on a couple of other platforms. So I felt like it'd be a pretty okay platform to put on here. Up front, you'll see it's just wide open in there. There's no suppression. There's no sound suppression going on here at all. It's just maybe redirection. That sound's all coming out the front. But yeah, this isn't, I've had some people say like, it looks like it's integrally suppressed, and it's not. That's not the point. It's just this big Venturi cooling shroud that probably won't work, adds a ton of weight, but is just really, really cool. Moving to the receiver. The lower is a Poverty Pony. Very, very basic standard mil-spec Anderson lower. It was like $29. Up front, I really needed a machine gun. Needs that big bolt on the side, that big charging handle on the side, and I went with New Frontier Armory for that. Their side charger, it's not reciprocating, which is one thing I really like about it. I want to be able to just let it rip, and I don't want to have to worry about this thing bouncing back and forth when I'm shooting. I really don't like reciprocating ones. And last time I took this apart, I forgot to tuck that guy back in. There you go. The back of those has a little hinged door that needs to be put down when reassembling so that you can get the bolt out. But yeah, that side charger, just so nice. Such a nice setup, fits the look. It's a beefy receiver too. This upper is thick in all the right places. I'm really happy with it. This thing weighs a lot. As I said, it weighs about 18 pounds, and it needed a carrying handle that's appropriate for the look and the feel of the gun. So it's got this little rail-mounted carry handle here that actually is like pretty much perfectly balanced. Let's see if we can do a one finger balance on it. So like, it's really well balanced using the carry handle, which makes it easy to, ruck about wherever you're gonna bring this out to the range. But yeah, the carry handle was necessary for this, both for functional purposes because it's heavy and because a gun like this needs a carry handle. At the rear and the pistol grip, you'll notice we have some wood. A gun like this with this classic look, the Lewis gun, had a wood buttstock with a separate wood pistol grip, and I figured that was a good inspiration to stick with. I went with a Boyd's gun stocks stock and grip. The stock, it utilizes an A2, so it uses a rifle buffer system. So there's an A2 receiver extension and a rifle buffer in there. And the grip is just the standard grip. One thing to note with these grips, it really should come with the appropriate screw, but mine didn't. And the screw is like twice as long as a normal one, which is a little bit of pain in the butt. So I had to go get a longer screw to attach the grip. But it's attached and it works really fantastically. For magazines, you can obviously fit any AR pattern magazine. But if we're going to go for that, that light machine gun look, we had to go with the Beta mag. In this case, it's a KCI 100 round double drum mag. They work okay. They aren't necessarily the failure generators, though they have the reputation for being, but they really aren't great for like really crazy hardcore usage. You do need to keep them a little finicky. You need to keep them lubed. You got to keep them with the graphite dry lubricant they include. You have to keep them clean. They're just a little more finicky than we would like them to be. But it had to be on here. You couldn't just stick a 30 round PMAG in this thing and call it a day. It really needed that 100 round double drum. Your shooting position on here is actually quite nice. You've got a good cheek rest or a good cheek weld here, and you're lined up perfectly with the 3x prism sight. However, if you are running it without the sight and just running it with the fixed irons, it is a little bit lower than a normal AR sight picture, but you can get on there and actually see the sights, just not with the sight in the way. So, yeah, why did I build this thing? Because I can. That's really why I do most of the things that I do, is just because I want to and because I can. And this is really a prime example of that. It really fit my desires to have something styled after, World War I, World War II machine gun, but in a modern pattern, firing system. And this was super, super affordable to build. I spent less on this, not counting some of the, bits and bobs like the magazine, but this base gun itself, I spent less than like a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 cost. If you're finding it at normal pricing these days, this was not terribly expensive to do. It just required a fair bit of handiwork building this thing up front. That was really the ridiculous part. But overall, yeah, this is the ArmaLewis. And we're going to get it out to the range and we're going to see, one, how does it handle with normal shooting? Two, I have some SOT buddies out here in Utah, and they are pretty excited by the prospect of this thing, and they want to put a drop-in auto sear in it. So we're probably going to get out to the range with some legal full auto parts, and see how it runs in full auto, and see if we can kind of burn this thing down, see if this barrel cooling system works at all. I'm not expecting it to really work at all, but if it does, that would really be kind of cool. It would be fun if all of the bar napkin engineering that went into this thing actually made a difference. But in the meantime, enjoy it, look at it, maybe build your own if you want to have something awesomely ridiculous in your collection. And as always, thanks for watching.